Hi, this is Doug from Dynamic Computing, and welcome to episode 33 of 10-Minute Amiga Retrocast. A2000 Adventures, the beginning. Now, I owned a great Amiga 2000 back in the mid-2000s. See what I did there? And it was a nice machine, had a great 040 processor, had a video toaster at 16 megs of RAM, really a nice one. But I never used it. I wasn't really doing much with the Amiga back then, except for taking them out of the closet every couple of years, hooking them up and seeing if they still worked and playing with them for a few days. That Amiga 2000 went into storage in the mid-2000s. Didn't think about it again much until last year when I pulled it out of the closet after I started my channel, dead as a doornail. The Varda battery had long since been taken out of it. But the damage had already been done, and I could see the damage on the board from the acid, and dead as a doornail. So, about 2 weeks ago, Curtis, the gentleman that sold me my SX64, which you see right here, emailed me and said he was down to his last piece of hardware that he wanted to sell, and it was an Amiga 2000 HD that worked as far as he knew. The price was right. So I ordered it up, got it in. Let's take a look at the unboxing. Now the fantastic news is it came in the original box. So it got sent in the same box it came out of the factory in. And the box, considering it's 32 years old or so, is in really good shape. So let's see what's inside. Flip that around. And we got her open. Let's see what kind of shape this beauty's in. Decent packing. Oh, vacuum cleaner box, nice. Got some fluffy air. A reasonable amount of packing material. That's nice. Thank you, Curtis. We've got the power cord, which is probably the original one that came with it. Our traditional tank mouse. I've got about 10 of these now. The keyboard. Let's see what kind of condition the keyboard is in. You know, that's in pretty darn good shape if you ask me. Every key is on there. Of course, it's a little bit dirty. We'll get it cleaned up. But that keyboard's in pretty good shape. Right. Now, on to the big one. There's our little beauty. Very possibly the original styrofoam too. Yeah. There we are. Faceplate is intact. It's just pushed in a little bit. I can fix that up. The actual unit is very, very clean. Take a look at the back. Oh, looks like we have one very noticeable expansion card here. We'll open it up and see exactly what that is. But this thing looks absolutely beautiful. Let's pop the top and look inside. Ooh, it says A2000 HD1 Quantum Drive, which means it's supposed to have a hard drive inside of it. Let's take a look. Okay, we've got the lid off. We're going to shift over to handheld mode for a minute. The insides look really, really clean. I'm really impressed. No signs of dust or anything in there. I think he cleaned it up before it came to me. We've got a nice hard card in here. We'll take a look, but it looks like it's got some nice memory expansion on it too, and it's got a quantum hard drive. That's exciting. I don't know if I'll keep that in there or if I'll just put my accelerator card in there with its own SCSI controller. Power supply looks like it's in decent shape, not too dirty. Floppy's in decent shape. And now I wonder what question every single one of you has on their mind right now. Tell us about the battery. Look down there. The Varta battery of Evil Doom has been replaced with a nice coin cell. I am so excited to see that. From my cursory examination, I don't see any signs of corrosion. Looks like that was taken care of long ago, which makes me a happy, happy boy. So if you think this is going to be one of those videos where a guy takes his probe and checks the voltages on the power supply and recaps it and puts so much effort into it before he ever turns it on, this is not that video. We're going to turn it on and see if it starts on fire. We've got power, we got a video signal, we got flashing hard drive light over there. Now let's see what happens. Come on. Oh, look at this. Okay. Asking for Workbench 1.3 disk, which surprises me because it has a hard drive in there, which means maybe it's disconnected, maybe it's never been hooked up properly. Let's take a closer look. So it looks like it is going to boot to the hard drive, but I had to do a restart to do it, which means the hard drive probably had not spun up enough when I first applied the power. It needed a little coaxing to come up. Well, we had her booting a single time with this Quantum hard drive. It's a 40 meg hard drive. It was tricky to get it to boot. It booted, but it would finally boot up to OS 1.3 if I would start it up and then do a restart and then maybe do a restart again, and eventually it would boot. I was able to see the data on it, but I could not really run any applications. Every time I would try and run any program, it would just guru and I'd have to restart. It worked for maybe 30 minutes and then tried to boot again. It was dead as a doornail. There wasn't anything critical on it that I could see as I was going through it, so I'm not worried about saving the data on this drive. Won't even recognize the drive now. It spins up, but HD Toolbox doesn't even see it. So I tried this drive. This is a nice Seagate ST34572W. It's a 7200 RPM drive. It is 4.5 gigabytes. And this little puppy is recognized just fine by Amiga OS 1.3. You can see the 1 gig, the old Amiga partition I had on here, 1 gig partition fine. It sees the other partition as an available drive space that I could partition and format. But this has Amiga OS probably 3.1 on it. I think this one came out of my Amiga 3000. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put 3.1 ROMs in here and use this as the boot drive. This will be a good start. This makes a perfect opportunity to take a look inside our lovely Amiga 2000. Most importantly, you'll see here where they replaced the Varta battery of Doom with this nice coin cell, and the battery back clock seems to work. I've had it up and down a couple of times booting from floppy, and it stores the date just fine, so I'm very happy about that. We've got our Motorola 68000 CPU and our ROM chips. Now, just as a point of fact, this is why the Varta battery is so bad in the Amiga 2000. When it leaks, it spreads out and it damages the 68000 CPU and a lot of the traces, and then the yuck goes up here and it can damage the ROM chip too. I've got Amiga 2000 boards where I've had to replace both the 68000 chip and the ROM chip in order to get anything out of the machine again at all. Over here, I believe we've got some nice 1 megabyte of RAM. Now, I'm also very pleased because this has a 1 megabyte Agnes in it, and I wasn't exactly expecting that. I thought maybe it was just a 512 one, but it's got a full 1 megabyte Agnes in it, which is nice. I'm going to double check and see if it has the newer Denise with the ECS chipset. It'd be great if it did. I'll investigate those chips here in a few minutes. What we're going to replace right now is this ROM chip. We're going to yank this little guy out and put a 3.1 ROM in there. When you're replacing chips, it's always best to use the right tool for the job. So I've got a nice little chip puller here. Now, I saw one on Adrian Black's channel, Adrian's Digital Basement. I'll put a link down in the description too, and link here. A really cool chip puller that I want to get my hands on. So I'm going to message Adrian and see where he got that really awesome chip puller. We'll put our little Amiga OS 3.1 ROM in there. Perfect. Now, I double checked. This is the same version of the Denise chip that I have in my other Amiga 2000, so I can't swap those chips out. Once I boot it up, I'll just double check and see if it's ECS or not. But on my old board, this is a non-working board that I'm slowly working on. You can see where it has a fair amount of damage from the old Varda battery down here. This is not the board I replaced the sockets on, but I do have some sockets I'll eventually replace on this puppy. But look at this little beauty. This is a 2 megabyte Agnes chip. So I'll put this DKB Mega Chip 2000 on here, just like I put on my Amiga 500, and that will immediately give me 2 megabytes of chip RAM instead of 1 megabyte of chip RAM. And all I believe I should have to do on the Amiga 2000 is jumper it to a little pin on Gary, and everything in the world is happy and good with 2 megabytes of chip RAM. That's going to be nice. Like I mentioned, use the right tool for the job, and I have a nice chip puller, PLA chip puller, that works just beautifully for pulling out our little fat Agnes chip. Do not try and do this with the wrong tool or with a screwdriver, or you will break the ceramic, you will break the chip, you will do something equally horrible, and nobody wants that. So finally, the little guy got out of there. That's what she looks like, the 1 megabyte Agnes chip. I'm sure I'll find good use for that. And we're going to put our little 2 megabyte DKB in here. Now you see it just has an adapter there that adapts the slightly different 2 megabyte chip in there with a little bit of circuitry and a 1 meg chip in there to give us all of our extra chip memory. And then this little guy will just go right on. I think it's, I better double check which pin on the Gary chip that it goes on, so I don't put it on the wrong one. So I did confirm it. It goes on pin 36 of Gary. You count from the lower left-hand corner, all the pins in the bottom, and then start at the pins in the top and count over to pin 36, and that gives it the signal it needs for the 2 megabyte chip RAM. Now, while I'm in here, I don't think there's anything else I need to do. I will give this thing a thorough cleaning, but that's not really my purpose right this minute. I do just want to see if I can get it to boot to 3.1.4, or I'm sorry, Amiga OS 3.1. Let's get her put back together. Once we get the power supply back in place, we'll plug the floppy back in. Remembering which way the little stripes go, and they go to the back right side of the floppy. There we go. This is our high-tech insulator. While I'm testing it, before I mount the hard drive onto the hard card in here, we want to make sure we don't short anything out there. So I'm using this high-tech insulator. And because this is a 68-pin SCSI device, I have to use my little 50-pin to 68-pin adapter. Those work like an absolute champ. So if you're looking for a SCSI drive for your Amiga and you can only find the 68-pin variety, these adapters are still fairly readily available. some power here and some power here. And then we'll switch the camera angle and see what happens. So I was thinking about the drive capacity and the fact that I could not see the entire capacity of the drive properly, and that I'd have to upgrade to Amiga OS 3.1.4 in order to do that. So I said, what the heck, let's just do it. So I've gone and I've reformatted the drive, partitioned it for a 600 meg boot partition, and the rest of it I'm going to use as a work partition. And I'm just installing Amiga OS 3.1.4. Now, I've done plenty of videos on that before, so I'm not going to do it step by step here, since this is just talking about my new Amiga 2000. But it seems to be working fine so far. Once I get it installed, since I don't have the Amiga OS 3.1.4 ROMs in here, we'll just have to do the soft ROM hack to get it to work. But should be fine until I get myself some Amiga OS 3.1.4 ROMs ordered for this little guy here. So this is where the problems began. Had a nice working Amiga 2000 system with the 2091 SCSI card with 2 megs of RAM. I had Amiga OS 3.1.4 loaded on it. It was working great, booted every time, performed pretty well. But I'm not the kind of guy that's going to settle for a 68,000 CPU at 7 megahertz. It's just not in my nature. So I wanted to hook up my lovely GVP 68040 card in there. Now this little honey, she's got a 33 megahertz 68040 with a math coprocessor. It has 16 megabytes of RAM on board, up to 64 megs it supports, but you need custom SIMs, and I need to find some custom ones. It has SCSI 2 on it, nice 50-pin connector, and then parallel port on the back here, and a serial port in the back. And it has an adapter that you can put an external 25-pin SCSI port on this adapter and plug it in. So I thought, beautiful, this is going to be great. Hooked it up to my working SCSI drive, nothing. Got a black screen on boot. What the heck is going on? So I started fiddling around with it and realized it had some jumpers on it that you can turn the SCSI on and off. Now if I turned the SCSI off, just no SCSI at all, well, it would boot, but only to floppy. It would not see the SCSI drive, it would only boot to floppy. And that was okay. So I thought, okay, here's a genius idea, Doug. Hook up the 2091 SCSI drive, have SCSI boot off of there, and just use this for the processor and the RAM. Nope, tried to do that, wouldn't boot at all. Okay, I disabled auto boot on this device, on the GVP. Then it would boot to Workbench using the 2091 SCSI, but it wouldn't see the 16 megabytes of RAM. So what the heck is going on here? Not acceptable. So I spent hours poring over the manual for this, thinking about different jumper combinations, trying to figure out why the SCSI just didn't work on it at all. And then something really terrible happened. Plugged this in, wasn't getting any response out of it. Oh, that's weird. Took this GVP card out of my Amiga 2000, just tried to boot it up with the 2091 card again, nothing. I'd get a black screen, or I'd get distorted images on the screen, and then a horrible screeching noise coming out of the speakers. Weird. Took out the 2091 card, just left it floppy only. Same thing. Of course, I'm thinking, I killed my computer. What on earth did I do? I killed my computer. This is what happened. Huh. Nothing. Black screen. Let's try this. Okay, try this again. Yeah, that doesn't look good at all. Let's try This'll take care of it. I'll be right back. Let's see if that helped at all. Oh my goodness, that made it worse. We'll try these. Oh heavens to Murgatroyd! You're back. You're back. So I had literally gone through and unseated most of the chips, reseated them, cleaned the chips, cleaned the connectors, swapped out chips, nothing. I couldn't get this thing to work again, to save my soul. The last thing I did was the 68,000 chip. This is my secondary board here, not the one in my original A2000. So what I finally did is I took out my 68,000 chip on the board, just thinking, okay, I've tried everything else. And lo and behold, down in the corner here, there was just a little bit of green, like from the Varta battery, which, as you know, has been replaced long ago. Little bit of green yuck. Okay, so I took my cleaning fluid, I cleaned the chip off, the pin, I cleaned out the socket here, plugged everything back in, prayed to the computer gods, boom, lo and behold, the thing booted up just like that. Absolutely perfect, time and time again, booted back up again. Dodged a bullet. Now, why did the 68,000 chip suddenly decide to take a dump after working great for 2 days and just randomly decide to lock up? I don't know, but I'm glad it did before I finished the computer and it was easy to fix. But that got me thinking about the GVP card again. If I can have a funky problem with a chip causing my Amiga 2000 to boot, what if I've got a funky problem with the chip on my GVP card, and that's why it refuses to work with SCSI connected at all? So, pulled out my GVP card again, started checking things out. This little beauty down here, okay, popped it off. Immediately I looked in the socket, there's a little blob of solder down there. Wiped it out. Okay, that was weird. Looked at the chip. 2 of the pins had a little piece of solder connecting 2 pins together. I got that piece of solder off of there, reseated the chip, put this back in my Amiga 2000, hooked up the SCSI, and had to play with the termination a little bit to get things right. But just like that, boom, sees the SCSI, sees the hard drive. The Amiga 2000 boots like an absolute champ. Okay, again, why did this card work with SCSI for so many years back in the 2000s? Because I used the machine some back then. The SCSI worked fine with a shorted chip. Who knows? But I'm glad I found it and it's working now. So then it was officially time for a happy dance. So this beauty is back in business. It's rocking a 68040 running at 33 megahertz, 16 megs of RAM, serial port, extra parallel port on there. But was I done? No. Next, I put my Picasso 2 video card in here, which I'll do an episode on. But as you can see, it's beautiful. This thing handles 16 million colors. It'll handle Workbench. Here I've got this in 800 by 600 mode, 256 colors. It is absolutely snappy and moves around very quickly. I'm very pleased with it. So you'd think I'd be done by now, right? No. Next, we're putting in my Zorro 2 USB card that'll give this puppy USB capabilities to make data transfer between all my Amigas incredibly easy with a compact flash card. Then we're going to put in my A2386 bridge board, all right, to give it full IBM compatibility. And I've got a 16-bit ISA card that adds video, it adds IDE, floppy, it adds a serial and a parallel port all in one card. That thing is so cool. It took me forever to find that back in the 90s, but I loved it. And then in one of the 8-bit sockets on here, I'll probably find maybe an 8-bit ad-lib card or something to give it audio capability. This thing will be rocking like an IBM too. Then we'll put in the video toaster again, and we're going to start to do some video production, combining 90s technology with state-of-the-art video technology, and try and do actual video work with the video toaster. And I hope you'll come along for the ride. So please like my channel, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at 10mark1. We'll put that right up there. But until next time, this is Doug from 10 Minute Amiga Retrocast, signing out.